Wait for it, guys. Wait for it. For a start, can you hear me? That's all I need to know. Can you hear me before we start? Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for joining me for not just me, but obviously as I've titled it this time, it's Andrew and Louise.
Appropriately titled today.
Appropriately titled. Let me get this a second. All right. So, yeah, apologies if you were waiting on the other scheduled video film on YouTube. Again, I'm trying to work out this new bit of equipment. Didn't work, hence the reason why we had to play around and we're back on the old system, and that's why we had to do a new stream. So good morning to everybody, good afternoon everybody. All right, so I hope you all enjoyed our 12-hour marathon session that happened on Saturday. My voice took about 2 days to come back to normal, but it hasn't stopped me talking, as Louise is very kindly pointed out. We should just shut up, she says. So I hope you all enjoyed it. We had some fantastic feedback from yourselves. It was absolutely brilliant. The day went by so fast. If you don't know what we're talking about, go back onto the YouTube channel. We got 2 streams showing the 12-hour live stream that we did, full of fun, frolics and excitement, bit of laughter as well, me acting out all the emojis. I've got a film coming out later on this evening with me doing all the emojis that I did throughout the day, one after the other. So that'll be a bit of fun, a bit of excitement. And anything else you want to say, Louise, about it?
It's good fun, wasn't it?
Yes, it was good fun. It went by quicker than what we thought. And we even managed to get some food in as well, sort of halfway through. And I hope you enjoyed the little chit chat as well. If you want to sort of, somebody said same time next week. I'm afraid I cannot possibly do that 12-hour, and Louise certainly couldn't do it either. Do that 12-hour every single week. Somebody asked if these question and answer sessions could be 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours long. I think that would really be pushing it for us, wouldn't it? Really, for our, what am I trying to say? Yeah, no. But we can try and make it a little bit longer, perhaps over the next few weeks. We may be able to. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking. You've all got questions coming in. I want to answer your questions in over the next hour, but that's about it, really. So I'm just going to start again. Welcome to the question and answer here today on the 3rd of June. No, it's not. It is 3rd of June. It's the 3rd of June already. My gosh, where's the weeks going? Right. First question, please, Louise. I hope you've got your questions ready.
I have.
First question.
The first one is from Gordo. Good morning from Calgary, Canada. I would like your opinion on steam cleaners and ultrasonic cleaners. Is one better? And if you can only afford one, which would you recommend?
Okay, so I think your best bet is to start off with an ultrasonic. An ultrasonic will last you for a long time, and also you can put items into an ultrasonic to clean whilst you go and do something else. A steam is a great addition to your finishing process. We started off with an ultrasonic. We then bought sort of a fairly inexpensive steamer, and do you know what? It was absolutely brilliant. An Italian brand, can't remember what it was, only lasted about 2 or 3 years. And a steamer obviously just blasts compressed water, so compressed steam at over 100 degrees on the item that you want to be cleaned. And it does get rid of all the gubbins and all the dirt and the dead skin cells that's trapped behind the stones and that sort of thing. It just gets rid of it. And you do have to be really careful with what stones you put in front of it, things you can't put, things like opals or emeralds in front of it, and neither can you put those in ultrasonic. So what am I trying to say? Get an ultrasonic, get one that is heated, get one with perhaps twin transducers, about 1.5 litre. Again, that's about 400, 500 pounds in the region of. That is far better. If you find that you're doing a lot of repair work, Steam cleaners come into their own when you're doing repairs because, again, all the dirt that gets trapped behind the stones, especially if you've got to do work that's quite near to the stones, an ultrasonic will not necessarily get rid of all that dirt underneath, whereas a steam cleaner will. So if you're just a repair shop, definitely ultrasonic, definitely a steam cleaner. If you're purely just making jewelry, an ultrasonic should be just right. Brand, Elmer, pretty good. Newsonic, pretty good. Durston have just brought one out. Hang fire on that one at the moment. But Elmer, you certainly can't go wrong. That's it. Next question, please, Louise.
Okay. Where was I? Julia has a question about using a rolling mill. Can I roll niobium?
Yep.
Through it to add texture, or would it damage the rollers?
Good question. I'm not too sure. I wouldn't risk it, even though the rolling mill rolls are hardened. What you'd have to do is pop onto a rolling mill manufacturer, for argument's sake, say Durston or Pepe or whoever. Find out what hardness their rolls have been hardened to, and then find out then the hardness of your niobium or titanium or whatever it is you want to texture, and just double check. Well, I wouldn't want to say yes and you roll through your bit of niobium and you actually ruin the rolls. Or give the manufacturers a call and ask them, can we roll through? Because they would know exactly the right answer. So I can't give you a definitive one. You can do a bit of homework or do the lazy way and ring up the guys who have manufactured the rolls and ask them to be on the safe side. Yes, Louise, next question. Oh, hang on. There we go. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Okay. Michael is asking, do you have a formula to figure out how many jump rings you need to make necklaces, etc.?
Okay, good question. What I would do, you obviously have the length of necklace or the length of chain that you need. The easiest way to work it out is to, let's have a think, get the overall diameter of the jump ring, okay? So say it's 5 millimeters for argument's sake. Then I would take off the thickness of the wire. So if that's 1 millimeter, you've got 4 millimeters. So in theory, one link is equating to 4 millimeters. You then would divide the total amount of necklace by the 4 millimeters, and that would give you then your required amount of links. Or experiment and perhaps put 3 or 4 links together, measure the length, but take off the thickness of the wire. That's your length for, say, 3 jump rings. Divide that length into the length of the chain. That would tell you how many units of 3, for argument's sake, you've got to do it, and times that by 3. So yes, that would be the mathematical way to do it, or just make up the chain and just keep on going making them. But if you've got to order them, that would be the best way to sort it all out. Next one.
Okay, the next question is Ashley. Do you get all of your silver jewellery hallmarked, even lighter pieces?
It would work out quite expensive unless you're sending off a huge batch of silver jewellery, because there is a minimum charge per piece, and also you got to pay for them to apply it and everything, that sort of thing. So if I was doing it, if you're thinking about making a 1 or 2 gram piece of jewelry, what's that going to be in silver? Not an awful lot, but by the time you add on the official hallmark, it's going to bump the price up quite a bit. Once you get into the 7 grams and the 8 grams, but then yes, they have to be hallmarked, and the cost of the piece is a little bit more, then you can absorb the cost of the hallmarking into the price of the piece. But for lighter items, you are legally allowed just to stamp 925 onto it. You should be able to, or not even have it stamped at all. But over the actual legal mark, which I think is it 7.81 grams, if I can remember, after that, it has to legally be hallmarked. So I wouldn't bother if it's under that. No. Next question, please, Louise.
Okay.
Today.
Cecil is asking, do you have any tips or resources to recommend for the perfect prong setting?
Depends. You can, if you want to make one up, you can buy these little jigs. These little jigs here are really, really good, but you do need quite a strong torch. Let me just put it on the side view. Where are we going? By here. Let me zoom in a little bit on here as well so we can see. Okay, so these, move that up there so you can see. All right, so what you've got here, if you want to make one up, these are little jigs that enable you to, get nice and close, to put the wires going down into these grooves. You can put all the wires leading along, and with this you can have 4, you can have 8, or I think it's 10. You stand it into the little stand here. You've got this little collet that then goes over the top. Not that one, because that one doesn't fit, Andrew. Which one fits that one? Or is it? It's this one here. That one there? No, it doesn't. How am I working this now? Do you know what? I can't remember how I've been using this for years. There we go. That's better. Okay, so you would put all the wires that you need nice and tight into these grooves, so they're sticking up like a wigwam. You get this to go over the top like that. That will hold all the wires in place, and where they all come to the top of here, you then can solder all those wires together. Then once you've got all those wires in place, you can then put a jump ring down inside and solder that to get a nice basket bearing to go upon it. That is a good way, but you do need quite a strong torch because this is steel and this absorbs quite a bit of heat from the torch. Or you would simply just make up my drawing board here, or you could actually quite undo this. You then would get your strip of wire like that. You would simply bend that in half, so you get like a U piece like that. So that would be your wire. You then would get another U piece of wire. So you get 2 U pieces of wire, and you would put them together so they go together. And try and work this out. That would go behind there. Basically, when you look down on top, you've got that. And then where these points then overlap, you would simply solder that, or just get 2 straight pieces, crisscross them, solder in that point, then you can bend them up into that sort of claw setting. What you don't want to do is try and solder one claw, then try and solder another claw, and then another claw, and then another claw, and they all fall apart. Either that, or get yourself one of your little solder blocks like this and put 4 holes or 6 holes equally spaced into it, stick the wires into it so they all cross over or they all touch at the top. Then you can solder it all in one go, then to get it all together. Hope that makes sense. That was right sort of question, wasn't it, for the answer? How to hints and tips on getting a claw set in. Yeah. That's the Americans called claws. They're a bit different over there.
With your solder.
With your solder. All right then. Next question, please.
This is from Matthew. I'm trying to cut 2 mil lengths of tube to add to a design, but cannot cut them at 90 degrees. They are all different. Any tips?
So in addition to you having one of these, which is a bit close on that one now. There we go. All right. So in addition to having one of these, which is like a joint cutter, you put your bit of tubing in here, and you can have it coming out, sticking out, and you'd saw through the gap, and you can make this the right length. You can put your bit of tubing. If I got a bit of tubing, no, I don't. But you can get a little bit of metal going into it, push it up, bring that over to hold that into place, and then saw down through that gap there. That then will give you the same amount of wire each time. Unfortunately, sometimes it isn't quite straight. So that is where this comes into play. And I bought one of these because somebody mentioned it in a question and answer a little while ago. It's one of these little mitre vices. Really, really, really good. I think Lawson has started to make these on his Facebook group, Lawson Car. If you search Lawson Car on Facebook, he started to make these little vices. And the idea is then you have, in this one, 45 degree, 60 degree, 30 degree, and 90 degree. You would simply put your piece of wire through the gap, as you can see there, in these little squares here, push that down so it traps it, turn the screws on the top, and you can either cut flush with it, or you can actually file it. And if it's a little small 2mm piece, you should be able to fasten it within this little miter vise. There are some of these that would cost you sort of 80, 90, 100 pounds. This one was from, where's this one from? Cousins UK. I think I paid about 60 pounds for this. Or if you go onto Facebook and you search a gentleman called Lawson Carr, he has just started selling these very, very reasonably as well. That's a little plug for Lawson. Yeah, sorry, Louise.
Can you get, somebody's asking, Andrew was asking, can you get a left-handed version
of
that, I presume?
This?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I don't know how this would be a left-handed version. Oh, this left-handed version of this? No. Well, no, you can. Must have been this, because then you hold this in your right hand. But if you're left-handed and you hold this, you can't sew. Yeah.
Really geared up for lefties, isn't it? I noticed all the drawers are on the right-hand side.
Unless you buy the new Durston double bench, and there's drawers on both sides. But primarily they are on the right-hand side. Yeah, I totally agree with you. So the answer to your question is, with these little joint vices, as far as I'm aware of, no. I totally sympathize with you, because yes, if you've got to try and, if I try and cut with my left hand, it never is going to work out right, and you can't. The only other way to do it would be to get an elastic band, a rubber band, put a little tack in the bottom, fasten that rubber band over the thumb piece, so the rubber band pulls it down tight. Then you can hold it in your right hand, so you don't have to keep pulling that down, because that's being pulled down by the rubber band, and then you can sew them with your left hand, knowing that that bit of metal is nicely secured in there because the rubber band's holding it down. Yeah, so there we go. I haven't even used this yet. I bought this. I thought, oh, that'll come in handy for demonstration purposes. Haven't used it yet. But then again, I haven't been in work, have I? No, I've been off work. I still haven't been in work. Just been doing filming. All right, that's enough chit chat. Right, next question, please, Louise.
Wow. Okay, you're flying. Right. This is Andrew again. Could you give any tips on directing heat when soldering? I'm having hit and miss results soldering.
What you've got to remember is that obviously you'd have a reflective block. So these little bricks like this are absolutely ideal. Reflective, these little soldering boards, brilliant. Don't get a brick like a kiln brick that absorbs and sucks the heat away. Have something that will reflect the heat back at you. That will help bring the heat onto the work. Let me put that a little bit away so I don't forget it in the first place. Depending on what you're really trying to do. If you're trying to, say, solder a chain, and you've got one little link that's exposed that you want to solder, you can get, the old-fashioned razor blades. The old-fashioned razor blades, what they're like, Wilkinson sword razor blades. Do you know what I mean? Razor blades. I think like your dad would have had years and years ago. Like a drawer blade. It's sort of that sort of shape, isn't it? You can still, I'm sure ladies use them for doing their legs and that sort of thing. And there's like an opening in the middle, and that's the sharp bit. That's a sharp bit. It goes in one of those. Yeah, like that. It's a razor blade. So what you would do is then you would get that razor blade over your chain. So your chain is coming along like this. You then would have a couple of links by there. So then you'd have a little gap then to play the flame of the torch only into that area. And that would then help the direction of the flame and keep it in the one place. The question was tips on directing the heat when soldering. So that would be a good way of stopping the heat from spreading and just keeping it localized. Directing the heat, bounce the heat back off one of these and just have a decent torch. Oh, I've got a torch missing there, is it? And just have a decent torch with enough flame to allow you to, and you can direct the heat away from the piece and then bring it on and feather it onto the piece. So I think that's what you mean. Auto fry has a combination steamer and ultrasonic, Wendy. That sounds really good, doesn't it? I like the sound of that. I have to check that out. Let me make a note of that now so I don't forget. Auto fry. Oh, don't forget, whilst we're talking completely now, don't forget the auto fry, because of our 12-hour marathon session on Saturday, auto fry's still got their Discount codes available until the end of June. If you want any discount off Otto Fright, 5%, use the coupon code ATB5 at the bench 5. You may be able to do that, Louise. You may be able to. Does it work, or is there an exclamation coming up? Louise has something. She has something on her fingers, and that will enable you. It's not catching, is it? No. She has something on her fingers. Yeah. So in the chat should be, I think. Double check. Is it there?
Yes.
You are amazing, Louise. Has anybody ever told you? Has anybody ever told you you're amazing?
Just you.
Just me. And also, whilst we're talking about it, if you want discount codes, I know Durston have been absolutely flooded with orders over the weekend and the beginning of this week. 20% off Durston products. The discount code is lockdown20. Louise will put the link in the chat now. That's available only until the 7th of June. So if you're watching this after the 7th of June 2020, that code, the Durston discount code, will not work. Have you done that one as well then?
I have done that one.
Excellent, excellent. See how organised we are? We are really organised.
I've got one more discount code.
Have you?
Yeah.
You have. Oh, okay. So those who are watching and interested in joining at the bench, it's half price until the end of June by using this discount code that Louise has just kindly punched into her little stream deck that should appear on the screen any moment now. It's there. 3 discount codes. Otto Fry until the end of June, Durston until the 7th of June, at the bench until the end of June. Okay, next question.
Discount just for the day?
Mark. Bully and Bully? I think it was.
Okay.
I think it was. Okay, so those are the links there. Use those discount codes. They're good for the time that I just said. Okay, let's get back to the questions.
Okay, Joseph is asking, how can silver keep the white shine after taking out of the pickle?
Okay. That nice look, isn't it? I don't think you can keep it because it is purely a very, very thin layer of fine silver. You have sterling silver, which is 925 parts silver, 75 parts copper. You put that in the acid strips the copper from the surface, which then leaves you with a fine silver layer. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous white layer. I must admit, it's beautiful. But because it is such a microscopic layer, if you rub it, if you get a cloth, it'll just rub off, and there's nothing that you can do about it, unfortunately, apart from perhaps trying to lacquer the surface, which unfortunately the lacquer does rub off, and you're back to that will wear through again. Or if you make your piece up with fine silver, which you're not going to be able to do, really, you can't really solder it at all, then you would have that gorgeous layer. So to keep that beautiful white layer, it's not going to be possible because of those reasons. It'll just simply wear off through day-to-day wear. How's that? Nicole loves her Elmer. Tis a good machine. I have to check that Otto Fry combination steamer. Okay, Louise, next question, please.
Next question, where am I? Can you discuss, this is Lynn, can you discuss the process of soldering multiple embellishments, balls, onto a backplate? What solder to use, either hard for bezel or at once, or how to try again? What solder to use after hard for bezel, all at once, or how to try again?
All right, the best way that you can do that is, because what's going to happen is that you can't have a different type of solder for every little bit of embellishment. That's a hard thing to say from someone with a stammer, a stutter. I can't remember what I got. What have I got? So you can't, but you can make life easier for yourself. So if you've got little balls, what I would suggest, Louise, please, family show, darling. If you've got little balls, what I would suggest you do is get a little ball burr, make a little, she's still chocolate, make a little divot in the metal. Then you can put a little bit of solder in that divot, and then when you come to solder the embellishment in that, it sort of sinks into the little divot. Let me draw you what I mean. So here's my overhead camera. I've bought, on your guys' recommendation, a nice white dry board. It's going to go by here, but it's going to go between there and there. When I get around to putting it up, it's nice and big, and I'll be able to do all my drawings then, like a teacher, on the board in front of you. Yeah? Okay? So don't argue, there'll be detention if you're arguing. So that's what I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks. I may even have a separate camera put on that. I don't know, or you can actually see it on this. Anyway, no problem. Okay, let's go back to this. So you have your surface overhead. Here we go. You have your surface. You get a little ball burr like this. It makes a nice little divot in the surface like that. Yep. Then when you come to solder your balls in place, you line that with a bit of solder. You then would get the ball, and the ball would sit nicely and rest in the little divot, which helps because it increases the surface area, and also because the solder likes to cling on to the surfaces, it will hold on to that ball more so than if it was just simply soldered onto the surface like that, because you don't have an awful lot of surface area here, but you've got an awful lot of surface area there. And by doing that, it will cling onto the ball. So even if you had, let's just draw this a minute, you'll be able to show you in a minute. So even if you had this going around and that was on the outside of the ring, you could solder the ball here, you can solder the ball here, you could solder this one after you've soldered that one without fear of that one dropping off. So your balls won't drop off if you put a little bit of a divot to hold them in place. She's laughing. She's laughing. And that will be able to hold little embellishments nice and safe and securely. And if you use your hard solder for your bezel, for instance, and you're putting embellishments on, you can use medium then for all the little embellishments, and they should be able to be held in place because of the increased surface area. Solder likes to grab onto it, and that will hold your balls safe. Next question, Louise.
Okay, Natalia is asking, which wire shape and thickness do you use most often for rings? I don't have a rolling mill, so I would like to know what wire I should stock up on, please.
You don't want anything too thick. Get yourself, just save up, get yourself a rolling mill. Get a rolling mill fund and put some money away. Ask for money for your birthday. You could crowdfund.
You could crowdfund for it, yeah.
You could crowdfund for a rolling mill, but get a rolling mill. That's your first objective. So when you finish this, get a little savings account, open up your savings account, start putting some money in your savings account to save it for a rolling mill. But what section do you want? I don't know. Depends on what you make. 1 millimeter, perhaps 1.2. Is about the thickness you want for the back of a ring. If you're making up a rectangular section, perhaps 2 millimeter wide, 1.2, 1.5 millimeter thick, perhaps. D section, you can have it nice, perhaps 3 millimeters in width. Do you know what I mean? It's like 1.5 millimeters deep. So it really depends upon what type of jewelry you're making. Don't forget, if you want to get into something that looks a bit more rustic, you could also hammer the metal a little bit thinner as well and leave the little dents into the metal. That looks really, really nice. Just depends on what style of jewelry you want to make. You're making stacker rings, well then the rings can't be too wide because you've got to allow for a few to be stacked on the finger. So yeah, that would be my best bet. So say 2 millimeter by 1.2 millimeters thick. If you go wider, perhaps a 3 millimeter wide band, maybe needs to be 1.5 millimeter thick or thereabouts. So those would be my ideal suggestions, but it is going to be cheaper for you in the long run to buy a rolling mill. Then you can just buy one bit of metal, perhaps 3 millimeter square, keep that, and then whatever ring you're making, you can just go to the mill and roll it down to whatever gauge you want without having to send off and buy some more metal to come back and forward. And you run out of stock and got to order some more. You just have that one item in stock. Yes.
Is it worth buying a second-hand one? This is me asking now for a friend. Say, but it's do they come up for sale often second-hand? Is it worth buying one?
Yeah, you can buy them. They are quite scarce. You need to keep a lookout on places like eBay, obviously. Go on eBay, search for rolling mill, save your search, and be notified when a rolling mill then comes on. You'll be emailed when eBay gets a rolling mill on for auction. You've got to be quick because they really don't come up that often. Sometimes you find ones that are really neglected. if you have a local adult education centre or a local college that may have sort of contacts with people, just put the feelers out there, ask for a rolling mill. Sometimes they are in really bad state and really bad condition. Then you're going to have to try and clean up the rolls yourself. Lots of ways of doing that, or you can actually send them back to the manufacturers to get them refinished.
So it's not the end of the world then if you buy a load of old codswallop. I mean, obviously you don't want to, but you can refurb them and...
Absolutely, yeah, you can refurb them, and yeah, but they really don't come up that often because. Or I tell you what you can do is join the Facebook groups. Join all the Facebook groups that are to do with jewelry, depending on where in the world you are. Just go on there, because then some people actually say they're just got bored and tired of making jewelry and they've bought all the equipment and they want to try and get rid of it. They may be selling it on there. So always look at all the jewelry groups. The Society of British Jewellers in the UK has a shop. People put stuff from tools on there all the time. They have destashing groups for jewelry. So just join all the groups and keep checking it every day to see if there's people coming on. Sign up for notifications from those Facebook groups. So if a post comes on, you get notified, go and check it out. And that, I think, would be the best way. But rolling mills don't come up that often. But don't forget, use your 20% discount code if you want to buy a rolling mill from Durston, because it's still on until the end of the week. 20% off a rolling mill. It's got to be the best deal you're going to get. Yes, Louise, next question, please.
Jane is asking, is there a UK supplier of the crinkle machine you used for the bangle on Saturday? I've seen one called Bonnie Doon, but in the USA only, I think.
Okay, I think that one is now sold by the Bonnie Doon people. I bought that from Betts Metal Sales in, where are they to now? Brain's gone. In Birmingham, obviously, in Jewellery Quarter, Spencer Street. They may still be selling them. I don't know. That's where I got mine from, but that was about 6-7 years ago. I don't know anybody who would sell them in the UK. Look for crinkle machines. Look on things like Cousins, Proops, whoever. Just do a search for a crinkle machine. I don't know of any UK seller off the top of my head. You may have to import it in from the US. But do it when obviously the exchange rate is right, is the right time. So apart from that, I'm afraid I really can't help you to source one. Next question, please.
Can we say congratulations to Annie, who passed her GIA?
Well done, Annie.
She is now an AJP.
AJP.
You've got some catching up to do.
I have. I just poured myself a drink a minute. keep on talking a minute.
Yeah, fabulous. Well done, Annie. That's amazing.
That's really good. Really good. We are slightly behind on ours.
Well, I'm not. I've caught up now.
You've done it. We did it, didn't we? Yeah.
Did last night, yeah.
She's a hard worker. So yeah, I think it's all closed now. I think someone said all the dates have been filled and it's been closed.
Oh gosh.
You know what we're on about? We're on about the GIA released some courses, some free courses whilst the lockdown period was in place. But they were worth $250 each. So we signed up for 3 different ones, didn't we? And Louise is on the ball. She's on a second assignment. I'm still on my first.
You now with my newfound
Okay, next question, please.
Okay. How far did we get? Crinkle machine. Okay. Is it advisable? This is Alex. Is it advisable to flux the entire piece each time you put the flame to it? Is it possible to use too much flux?
It's not possible to use too much flux. I think if you're scared of fire scale, nothing wrong with putting too much flux or a lot of flux over the whole surface, because that will stop the torch from actually producing a fire scale on the piece itself, and that's fine. You just simply go through your flux a lot faster than someone who would just simply put it on the joint, because then as soon as you put it in your acid, it all comes off. So if you're buying expensive flux, don't. Just go and get yourself a borax cone and a borax dish. This will last you years and years and years and years. Very, very cheap. And I would suggest you use some borax. If you start using things like magic boric or whatever it is, it does then tend to be quite expensive. Or even if you're using, what's that called? You know, the brain is gone today, isn't it? Anyway, disregard that. But yeah, borax is the best. Put it all over the surface, protects the surface. You can't use too much. 7.78, thank you, Charlie. 7.78 grams is the a legal required weight to have the items hallmarked. Under that, you don't have to have things hallmarked. Thank you, Natalia, for that. Yep, that's it. Next question, please.
Okay, Puppeteer Andrew, could you recommend learning a jewellery CAD software? If so, which software?
They are all expensive, basically. I think if you don't have much money and you can get one that is called Rhino, which is very, very good. Rhino software. You can get some plugins for that specifically for jewelry. Rhino Gold. Very, very good. It is the cheaper of the 3 or 4 of them out there. Nothing wrong with it. You can do everything on that you can ish with a more expensive package. So you've got used to have Art Cam and Jewel Smith. I think they've gone bust. So you've got Rhino and Rhino Gold. You've got 3 Design, and then you've also got the major one in the world, which is called Matrix. With 3 Design, you can get different versions. You can get one that we can produce your finished piece, and 3 Design is absolutely brilliant because you can render it so it looks exactly like it would be, and you can change things. It's got parameters on it. You can alter the size of the shank, and it'll alter the size of the stones and all that sort of thing. You can get a jeweler's version of it, which sounds a bit strange, but that does not produce an STL file. An STL file is what you need to send to a casters to be able to cast it. But this doesn't produce that. I'm not quite sure what it does. I don't quite see the point of that. But if you go for the more expensive one, you'll be able to produce your STL file and I think produce it yourself. I think that's the sort of software that it is, and you'd pay more for that ability. Matrix is one of the world's best, I think, in terms of complex and all the things you can do with it. But if you're stuck on money, I did have a thing called a Moment of Inspiration, which was very, very basic and not very good. But do look up Rhino Gold. And I know there's lots of people online who teach in Rhino Gold, and the Goldsmith Centre in London have people in to teach Rhino Gold. Yes, Louise, so you're
I was just going to say, Andy has said Blender is free and has a jewellery add-on, and Chaos and Fusion 360 for 3D design is pretty good and available for free.
Say that again, what was that? I have heard of Blender.
Blender.
Yep.
And Fusion 360.
And Fusion. Brilliant. Yeah. I know it does depend on what you want from the software. Some people just want to be able to produce a basic idea and perhaps drag and drop and just make basic images to represent what it's going to look like. Some people want the full package. But certainly go and check those out. So that's Blender and also Fusion 360. Go check them out and see what that's all about. I know there's a guy on one of the Facebook groups a few weeks ago who was going to help people, and he was going to do an online course, and he was asking people to use Blender, which was going to be really good because everybody could afford that because it didn't cost anything. But obviously there must be some limitations, otherwise you wouldn't have a software that's worth like £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 and give it away for free. So we'll certainly go and check that out, won't we?
Look out for Blender version 2.8. Andy is saying Rio Grande have tutorials on YouTube too.
Wow. See what we do? We're a mine of information. If I don't know the answer, there's people out there who do. Marvellous. Okay, Louise, next question, please.
Okay. KB, how do you make a very small setting?
What type of setting?
Just says a very small setting.
The easiest way to do that is to use some tube. I would guess a tube. Bear with me a second. Let me just go and move. I got something down by here that we can show you. There we go. There it is there. In fact, let me move this. Let me use the camera, Louise, because we're just simply getting the side of her head. That's better. Thank you. Woo! Thank you. Now let's get back into position. So there is a little thing called a collet punch that looks like that. And these are all conical holes. This is about 17 degrees, is it? 17 or 23 degrees, something like that. So the idea is you get your little bit of tube. I don't have any tube to play around with, unfortunately. But what you do is you get a small little piece of tube, perhaps 3-4 millimeters in length. You would simply put it in one of the holes, and then you would get a hammer. Where's my hammer? There's my hammer there. Then you would get a hammer, and then you simply tap it into the hole, and that would be making it conical. Let me get my pen and paper. So the so the hole goes through like this. So that's the section through that. You get your piece of tubing in here. Your piece of tubing would go in. Obviously, then your tubing looks like that. Yep. You would force that bit of tubing down. So we have, this is the collet punch again. So your tubing now is sort of forced into that sort of shape like that. Okay. Then you get this punch in the top here that would then force out the, and that would do it that way. And then you'd put the punch in here and that would force out. So then you've basically got a collet. There we go. You basically have a collet type of setting. This goes in the top then that spreads it out. So you get quite a nice V-shaped setting. And from that piece of metal, then what you can do is simply file out grooves like that, that then you'll be able to make up your little setting with claws, which would be the easiest way without having to do any soldering or hammering or shaping it and that sort of thing. Bit of tubing, collet set, and then you can make up some really small settings. And it's got some really quite small hole. That's about 3 millimeter there. So by the time then you add the tubing to go in it, that would be fit about a 2 millimeter, 2.5 millimeter stone, something like that. So that would be the smallest you could do on that, but that would be the best and easiest way to make up some small settings. Next, this hour is a doddle, isn't it? Compared to what we did on the weekend. Absolutely. Sorry, Louise, next question.
That's okay. This is Lynn, sorry. How would you attach a ball rivet holding a bail onto a back plate? I've tried balling the back of the rivet and melted everything but the rivet. Sterling or fine silver, which is best for the rivet?
Okay. So, there we go. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you ball your rivet first. Piece of wire, upside down, like that. Get your flame coming here. There's your torch. Here's your flame. You melt a little ball on the end. Once you've done that, that is part of your rivet already made up. And then if you're looking at a side view of your pendant, so you've got a stone here, there's the bezel, here's the back plate here. So that's the side view. You've got then a bail that you want to put in this position by here. That comes down, say, argument's sake, like that. Yep, like that. I hope this makes sense. Then you would put this through this way. So there's your, wrong way around, Andrew. You put the rivet in this way. So there's the ball on this end here. That would go through. So the ball sticks out on this end. That would going to go through a hole that you drilled through the bail and through the back plate. And then the wire would stick out the back like that. Then all you need to do is several things you can do. You can just bend that bit of wire down if you want to, so you don't have to rivet it, or cut it and make it about 1 millimeter or so longer than what you actually need. There, so when you're looking down on the back of it, there's your back plate. Here is the bail that is going the other side. You've got the little wire coming through here. So this is the back view now, as you look through it that way. Then you just get a ball peen hammer. That ball peen hammer has a little ball on the end of the hammer like that. Like that. You'd hammer that and you would spread the back of that rivet. You would spread it out. If you're scared that you're going to damage this little ball here, well, then you can always get your little collet set and just rest the ball in the hole here. Or if you've got a draw plate, just put the ball in the hole just so it touches the hole. Then when you hammer down on the back of the rivet, it will spread out and the ball won't drop, and you should be able to do it quite nicely from there. That would be, I think, the best method to do that. But make sure that you ball the wire, put the ball through from the front so it looks nice, and then it doesn't matter too bad then upon the back, and that would be the nice place then. And also then you could have it so the bail swivels as well when it comes onto the pendant. That would be your best way to do that. Next question, please.
Okay, this is from Silver Pearls. I would love to purchase the Sievert torch that you recommended. However, I live in the USA and cannot seem to find the jeweler's torch here. Any suggestions?
They don't. That's one place Sievert don't seem to sell, and I don't know why. I think there's a brand called Hokie. Hokie, 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 a Hokie torch, and that's very similar to the Sievert that uses propane, and that has little nozzles that go on the end. I think it's Hokie. Just look out for that. It is unfortunate that Sievert don't supply it to the US. Perhaps you could try and import it, perhaps, but then you got to look at propane tanks. So I really can't help you with that. But there's another brand, Hokie, and I'm sure there's some American. There are lots of people from America here that will be able to help you with that. They must probably know exactly the type of thing that I'm after. So yeah, have a quick chat. If you know, I think it's the brand Hokie, have a go on the chat. If you know about it, put some chat on there for, who was it then, just then, sorry? The lady?
Silver Pearls.
The Silver Pearls. Help Silver Pearls out, everybody. Recommend a torch in the US, please. All right, next question.
Okay, Jason is asking, when sand casting, can I leave a wooden dowel running through the middle of my mould to create a hole through the piece? Are there any issues that wood may cause on contact with molten metal?
No, it's a very, very good idea. Something that did I experiment with it? I can't remember I think I did something with it. People use it with things like cuttlefish casting, but yes, you can, because the wood will hold up just long enough to allow for the metal to solidify. So if you're making a signet ring and you want to put perhaps an oval stone or a round stone into the head, when you come to put the mold in place, you can always somehow, I can't remember how we would do it. You would make a hole in the mold, you put the wood through it, then you would push that into, let me see if I can draw this. See if I can draw this. So there's that, like that there. Okay, let's have a look. See if I can draw this and make this look okay. So there's your model there, which would look something like this. There's the head of the signet ring that would come around like that. That has a bit of head like that. This is your bit of wood, and your bit of wood would come out underneath. So that's a hole in the top of your signet ring, and your bit of wood then will be sticking out there and there and there. Hope that makes sense. You then would simply push that into your sand casting, complete with the wood in place, put your mold on the top, so you have the other mold on top, pack the sand in, remove the two halves, carefully remove your master, then take the wood out of the master and put the wood back into the sand mold, put the top ring on the top and cast it as you would normally. The sand will hold obviously that little bit of wood in place, and when you pour the metal into it, it will go around the wood. The wood will burn, but it'll stay solid long enough for the silver to go around it and solidify. I can't say it's going to be an absolute perfect exact circle, but at least it's given you the beginnings, the basis of having a hole in a piece that allows you then to perhaps use your burr straight away, rather having you drill into it and then burr or cut out circles and so forth. But that is a very good question, and that's something that I really want to do a little bit more of actually in the very near future. Next question, please, there, Louise. Someone's mentioned double-edged razor blades. Yes. Okay, next question, please.
Okay, Mike is asking, can you explain how to cut a mold with a very deep recess behind the head of a large wolf head ring, or maybe do a live mold cutting class? Thank you.
Yeah, I think we were asked this, I think it was last week or the week prior. They were talking about, somebody was talking about a basket setting behind and trying to get behind and to do it. The thing is that the rubber that you're using really does have to be quite elastic. Sometimes the Castaldo gold rubber does tear if you pull it too far. The Castaldo do have some awesome new, what's it called? Rubber. And I've got some. Bear with me a second. Don't even put the clock on because I'm literally going to be, I won't be long. Give me 2 seconds. Don't count, don't count, don't count. Don't count, I'm not going to be that long. Don't count. Oh, shoot. Oh, good grief, good grief. I'm all right. That was all that was all the fold forming from from Saturday. Oh, I've had other things on my mind. Okay, Castaldo do something called super stretch. Castaldo do this called super stretch. This is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant high performance, high elasticity silicone rubber. And it is really, really good. Castaldo Super Stretch. I was very kindly given this by the guys in Castaldo. It's purple, it's not rubber, it's a silicone rubber, and it is amazing because it will stretch a long way and it'll go back and retain its shape. Yeah, that's a different one, that one, is it? Yeah. So we've got Super Stretch, which I would definitely recommend. I definitely recommend you getting some because it does allow you, especially when you're cutting underneath a mold, to allow you to stretch the one half and then get your blade in there to cut it, and it'll go back no problem at all. A lot of the times you gotta sometimes cut a little spiral to get things out of. So you'd leave a wedge of rubber inside perhaps the wolf's head or underneath the basket of a setting. You cut it away so you have the bottom half, the top half, and a bit of rubber then is left in the hole. You would then have to cut a little spiral to enable that bit of rubber to sort of unspiral out of the mold itself. So that Castaldo rubber is very good. It will help you immensely. And perhaps, yes, if I can get something like what you say, perhaps I will do a little live broadcast on how we would cut open a mold like that, or even film it, and I'd put it up on YouTube. So that is something that, yes, we do need to look at. It's a very good question, very good question. So yeah, on the side here now, don't forget Louise is still putting these coupon codes out. The Auto Fry is available, so is until the end of June. The Durston 20% off, please use that. Matthew is absolutely inundated with orders. He thanks you very, very much as well for all the orders you put in, but you can still use it until the 7th of June. So you've still got 4 more days to get 20% off your Durston products by using the code LOCKDOWN20. Okay, Louise, next question, please.
Okay, where was I? Okay, Andy Scott. I keep getting pinholes in my solder joints. What am I doing wrong and how do I stop it occurring?
What you don't want to be using is this. You don't want to be using syringe solder. That is a no-no. Only use it on very small or chains, very small jump rings, that sort of thing. So what you'll find is with this, it is quite a porous type of solder. Use it for ring shanks, use it for soldering bangles. You will get, not to say porosity, but you'll get bubbles and holes within the solder joint. I think that is as a result of the flux that is within the solder itself. So always make sure you use pallet or strip, obviously, or the wire solder. You know what I mean? Like this is the silver, or you get the gold panel, something like that. Definitely get that. Get yourself nice clean flux, make sure it's not dirty. And also the main contributor of pit holes in your solder joint is that you overheat the solder. Remember, when you put the flame on the piece, you do not want to put the flame on the joint itself, because that is where your solder is. And because, I can't wait to put my new board up actually, because I'm going through loads of paper here. Let's just start a new one. So you've got your joint coming up. Here's your 2 areas here that you're going to solder, okay? You flux it, there's flux all over it here. You put your pallion of solder here and say a pallion of solder there, all right? Look how big this metal is all around it. Look how small your bits of solder are. Your bits of solder are really, really small, okay? You bring your flame, I'm getting some joy out of drawing flames today. You bring your flame onto these bits of solder. These bits of solder are going to melt. They're going to melt pretty much instantaneously, but the rest of the metal will take longer to heat up. You do not want to put your flame on the solder. You want to have the metal on this, which the solder is on top of, to melt the solder, because then you will not overheat the solder. If you put the flame on the solder will melt poof, straight away, but it'll be coming hotter and hotter and hotter whilst the metal on either side is slowly getting up to temperature. And by the time the metal has got up to temperature, you've overheated the solder. You may have caused it to bubble, which has completely ruined the properties of the solder itself, and you will get porosity because of that. So put the flame on either side of the joint, play the flame either side, either side, either side, and when the metal is hot enough, the solder then will melt exactly where you want it to go in the joint, and you can be sure the solder will not be overheated. Don't forget, tiny bit of solder will melt, the bigger bit of metal around it won't. Keep heating that up first, and don't put the flame on the solder, because you don't really want your solder to melt or overheat before the rest of the metal has come up to the right temperature. I think we've got time for 2 more questions, Louise. I think 2 more questions.
Okay. Michael says, speaking of Durston, would it be worth the international shipping to buy the ultrasonic over a best built ultrasonic for cheaper?
Okay, so your best bet, depending on where in the world you are, Michael, your best bet is to look at your local distributor to see who is supplying you with, say, the Durston products in your country. Check out the price. So go to them, work out how much it is going to cost for your Durston ultrasonic to be shipped from your local supplier to you. Then go onto the Durston website, get the ultrasonic that you want, put your coupon code in place, put the country that you want it to be shipped to, and look at the price. That would be the best way of describing, because if you're in the UK, it's cheaper, or even in the EU, it's going to be cheaper to buy it from Durston Tools than it is to go to Cookson or Walsh or Cousins or whoever, because they will offer you your 20%, and it would be the same shipping from Durston to you as it is from Cookson's to you or Cousins to you, for instance. But abroad, double check and do your bit of homework to find out the prices of what it's going to be. So I can't really answer that. Depends on the shipping costs, to be honest. And I know that I think it costs around about £75 to have a rolling mill shipped as well. So you'd have to take that into consideration. But I'm sure even your tool supplier would charge you roughly that if you wanted it shipped directly to you. So do some homework, check out the prices before you order, just to be on the safe side. One question, Louise, one question?
Just going back to your syringe solder briefly, Karen would like to know, does it go off? Do you have to use it within a certain time?
It will basically go hard. And when it goes hard, it's really, well, if don't buy the, I did buy the 30-gram tubes, okay? You used up about a quarter of it before it got so hard and you couldn't push it down the syringe. There are ways of sorting that out, and I'll come to that in a second. So what I would do is perhaps buy the 5 grams or the 10 grams, and then what you do is just use it as you would. Use it very sparingly, just by a small amount. It will dry up and it will go off. So if you have it lying in the... Just gesturing again.
You ignore me when
I don't. I can see you from the. I can see you in the corner.
It's when do.
I can see you from the corner of my eye.
I'm not looking.
I can see you. Don't give you. I can go wink like that to let you know that I see you. I do give you like subtle thumbs up and things like that every now.
You look the other way. You go like that when I try and tell you the time's up.
You can, if it's dried up, you can get the syringe, scrape it out. I think you can add lavender oil to it, as far as I think I can remember. Lavender oil, and mix it back up to a paste and try and put it back into the syringe. But I don't think it'll ever be the same as what it was originally. So the tip is, just by very, very small amounts, you don't then have it going off and it won't go hard on you. I'll have one more question. Come on, Louise. Let's have another question. One more. Come on. On a roll.
I'm just going to pick a random.
This is how it goes fast. The hour does go fast, yes. 2 torches at once, heat up the metal. Good idea. Very good idea on either side.
Ooh.
If you're
Therese Marie. I have a vintage rolling mill. I think it's from the 1970s.
Nice.
Wow. I was told it was from Spain. Is there any way to find the manufacturer? It's orange in colour, but there is no label or stamp.
Right, okay.
And no serial number or anything, nothing.
It's Italy.
I want to see it. It sounds cool.
Yeah, is that Italy?
Spain.
Spain. Don't know. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll ask Matthew. I'll ask Matthew. Am I speaking to him next? So it's 1970s rolling mill. It's orange.
Orange in colour, no label, no stamp.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, but Spanish, we think.
A Spanish one. I will certainly ask him and come back next week. And if I can find out the information, I know he's in America at the moment visiting his parents. As soon as I can get hold of him, I shall certainly ask him. But he should be able to tell you exactly what that is. Certainly can do. Okay, so how are we looking now? If you're in America, get Pepe. Matthew does have an American distribution warehouse in America, so he should be able to supply you that in America for the same price, or most probably cheaper than Pepe now with your 20% discount code. That's about it. Should we have go through? Let's have one last quick. I could stay here for hours now.
Actually, there's one which I saw. There's one which I've missed.
Yeah, we missed one.
Oh, here we are. How do you maintain your tools such as files and mandrels, flex shaft? How often should I have to oil them? Do you clean steel shoots for the barrel polisher?
Steel shot. Yeah. Okay. So I think with a pendant motor, a flex shaft, I think after 40 hours of use, you should remove the shaft. You should take out the shaft. There's lubrication that comes with it when you buy it. You should clean it, and then you should re-lubricate it with some fresh grease. Would you ever do that? I don't know. Sometimes you should do if you feel it is sort of playing up, and sometimes if the sleeve gets a little bit on the warm side, it would mean there's a little bit of friction that's happening inside. So you can simply undo I think I've done it on YouTube. You can undo the end here. That would simply then pull out the shaft. You could take out the handpiece off and you slide the shaft out from the outside, dry it with a cloth, get some oil that comes with it, some grease. You lubricate the shaft, put it back together, and you'd have it running. You can replace the brushes in them as well, but I wouldn't do that unless you're really having problems. Tools on the bench, it's worthwhile perhaps once a week just going over them and checking them. Just get a little bit of oil on your finger and then perhaps just rub them into these little areas by here just to keep these going. It just depends whether you're in an area that's quite damp or perhaps high humidity. I know some certain areas of America has a lot of high humidity and tools start to rust. So perhaps just get a nice gentle bit of rag, soft rag with a little bit of oil on it, and perhaps your tools just need a bit of wiping over. But that's what I would do. 40 hours on the this thing, what's it called? Flex shaft. Rolling mill, I think a lot of them now are sealed for life. I know mine downstairs has grease nipples. She's smirking again. You're smirking again. He's talking of grease nipples, small balls and more. What was that file
It's just getting very smutty.
What was that? What was that file we called? A bastard file. Was it a bastard? It's called a bastard file. We even had to look at the meaning of a bastard file, didn't we? We did.
And I just giggled and I can't remember what it was.
Okay, so what are we on about now? Yeah, rolling mill. Nowadays the rolling mills, the gears are all sealed for life, so you won't have to play around with the gears at all. What I would do at the end of every day, perhaps, is just go over the rolls, with a little bit of a rag that has a very little bit of light engine oil, machine oil, something like that, just to go over the rollers, just to protect them. But don't forget, when you come to use them the next day, make sure there isn't too much oil left on them, because the oil will attract the dust. If there's dust on the rolls, and when you're doing the rolling, the dust will be pushed into the metal, which will cause marks. So always make sure that there's no sort of surplus oil on the surfaces, and that's what I would do. And obviously, when every week, perhaps come along with your pliers, or not pliers, what are these things called? Tweezers, that's it. Come along with your tweezers, make sure they come together nicely, make sure they come together a nice point, perhaps shape them. Keep an old file just for cleaning up the tips of your tweezers, because they're quite important to be able to pick up small little objects, and they get so much abuse over the weeks. So just make sure that you look after your tools each week. I think that should be about it.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course you can.
I can't remember the lady now with the rolling wheels. Therese Marie was her rolling wheels got me thinking. And the tools that you use now, have they changed much over the course of, I don't know, since people started making jewellery?
I think
it'd just be interesting to see how tools have developed.
You can go back. Sorry, go on.
It's okay.
There are lots of pictures from the medieval times if you search jewelers' workshops, and if you look at the line drawings, the benches are pretty much the same. The benches all have the semicircular cutouts, and perhaps I know I've got some books with the pictures in, and there's like 3 or 4 around like a table, and they've each got their own cutout. Back in the days, there was no light necessarily. What they used to use then was globes of water positioned by a window, and the light would come through, and that would go into the globe that would produce light into the area that they're looking at. So that's there. You then would have drawer benches, and there's like big handles on the drawer benches to do that. The flames are pretty much very similar, because in Birmingham they call it a Birmingham side light. So the flame is like that. It's just all day, just by the side, and that's just natural gas, very small flame like that. And then when you came to use it, you used to have a blowpipe, and you used to put the blowpipe in your mouth and put the blowpipe going through the flame, and then as you blow, obviously then it produces oxygen, which produces a nice sharp pointed flame. The trick was to be able to fill your cheeks with air. So as you have the tube in your mouth, you're contracting your cheeks, which then is pushing the air out, but being able to breathe through your nose to fill your lungs up. So you've got it going through, otherwise you're going, you got to start again. Yeah, so you've got to keep your cheeks full of air from your nose going into your lungs, from your lungs into your mouth. Yes, but there are some people up in Birmingham who still do it. If you walk around the quarter, you can still see the little, it's called Birmingham side light, and just a bit of gas, and they use that right by the side. And there's some people who still use it nowadays. I know somebody who does. I think obviously things like the pendant motor, that sort of thing. You can also get something called an Archimedes drill, which is like a rod with like a chuck on the end, and they have a cross piece of wood, and from that then there's a bit of string that goes up to the top. And you can spin, there's a counterweight on the rod, you spin that, and there's that, you pull that cross member up and down, it spins and it drills. And that's called an Archimedes drill. So you can still buy them these days as well. So I suppose electricity has made it more convenient for everybody, and things like roller mills and polishing motors. But pretty much all the basic tools like the pliers, the tweezers, and everything that you use on the bench is pretty much standard of what it was years and years ago. So nothing's much changed.
Why reinvent the wheel, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. Are we done, love?
I think so. There's lots of love for the 12-hour live stream. Lots of thanks for the coupon codes. Lots of people have been buying tools and equipment, which is great. And a couple of queries about the shell. You still need to sort out the shell.
Yeah. I still have it here. This was a shell that we cast live on our live stream using the Delft clay. We've yet to decide what we're going to do with this. I think yes, we are going to auction it off again for the proceeds to go to UNICEF. And on that, we raised £1,200. £244 for UNICEF from all your donations. So thank you all very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for that. Coming a little bit later on this evening, I've put together a film of all the emojis that I acted out throughout the whole day. That's about 8 minutes long. Goodness knows how many I did. So that'll come on there. I'll put that up on YouTube a little bit later. That's for a little bit of fun. That's it, Louise. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Another session over and over. Thank you, Cecil, for membership. You're more than welcome. Brilliant. Benzomatic makes a good small torch. Excellent. Cool. Okay, everybody, thank you very much for joining us today. Louise and myself, we should be here again. You working? No, you're okay next week. No, you're okay next week. It's the week after. Or you working Wednesday? You are working Wednesday. From next Wednesday, I think it's just back to normal for me. Okay, so 3:30 again then. Can you manage that? Yeah. Another question and answer. Yeah, another question and answer next week, guys. Yeah, I think we can do. Scroll down to the bottom of the chat, please. Do a second. See, keep going. You still going? Wow, lots of people on. Appreciate everybody who's come on today. Thank you so much indeed. We have notified all the winners for the competition. Congratulations to everybody who has won. We have notified everybody. We've also contacted the companies who will now be in contact with you to get your delivery information, and they will liaise with you for delivery of all your prizes. People who wanted me to sign the t-shirts, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to do that because the t-shirts will be shipped to you directly from the manufacturers. So we won't have any sort of say in whatever happens to those. But if you have ordered a t-shirt or an apron and you wanted them signed, get back in contact with me and I will sort something else out for you. Not a problem. Perhaps I don't know, perhaps these little cards that we give away with all the bits and pieces, the ring size table, and yeah, perhaps I'll sign one of them for you. But yeah, just get in touch if you want that, if you've won a t-shirt or an apron. That's it, Louise. Excellent. Yep, super. Everybody, thank you all very much for joining us this afternoon. It just seems a bit of like an anticlimax now, just finishing after an hour, doesn't it? It just seems really, really weird. Not long enough. It's not long enough. Right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. We will all see you 3:30 next week, which is the 10th of June. Mm-hmm. Got your slide in place for closing? I think it's there. Is it there? No. Media, in the middle. In the bottom. You've forgotten. In the middle. It says media. Go down. That's the one. Yes, we're there. Oh. Nearly went. Right, excellent. Louise, you don't have to do anything. I put it in position. No worries. Sorry, I thought we stopped all that now. No. This is just the start of it. Everybody, see you next week, 3:30. Thank you, everybody who came on watching today. Muchly appreciated. That's such a word. Thank you for all the questions. Join us again next week. Take care. See you then. Bye.